Chris Landry, I appreciate you. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the game.
Hey, good to be back with you, Ryan. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Well, I got a little scratchy voice. I don't know. I'm chasing this sore throat syndrome here in T-Town.
Well, I spent last week in Mobile with the flu and lost my voice, so didn't join you guys last week because of it, which is not good. So if you're going to do a little radio interview, or in your case, host the show for several hours a day, not having the voice and a sore throat's not a good thing.
Yeah, but now you being a former coach and understanding the yelling, do you have any secrets? Do you have any?
I don't. I've never really had the whole losing the voice problem. Like people tell me do the honey and whiskey thing. I can't do it because I just don't like the taste of alcohol, any alcohol. So I can't do that. I don't even like the honey and lemon that's heated too much. But that supposedly helps. I know a little warm water with a lemon in it's supposed to help, but I've never really had a problem with it. This was just something that was really bad, and I guess I didn't help matters because obviously it really started to hit me at the East-West practices the week before. So I think it's a combination of the being tired with the length of the football season. I do a lot of my work by film at home, so I'm not in contact with a lot of people. So my doctors tell me that, you get around people, then you get all the germs, and you have a low, tolerance level for it. So, I think it was a combination of being overtired. As you know, this type of weather now at Mobile and where I'm from in Baton Rouge, it could be 35 one day, 75 the next day, and all that stuff just kind of came down on me at once, and then I had to kind of push through with the Senior Bowl. So, there are a lot of people, a lot of personnel people and coaches around the league kind of laughing at me because I was doing a lot of pointing and nodding. I wasn't able to talk a whole lot in meetings.
Chris, let me ask you about Mack Wilson here, and then we're going to go to these coaching changes. I was looking at some draft projections when you began to look at Mack Wilson, and I was noticing that he was as high as number 20 going to Pittsburgh. Is Mack Wilson a top 20 prospect in the NFL?
No. And here's the thing I would say to everyone out there, and you know this, but the people that take a lot of those mock drafts seriously, those are not scouts. Those are people that have opinions. They just this, that, and they throw different ideas together, and they change from one day to the next because whoever told them the latest thing, that's what they go with. Teams don't know who they're going to take yet. So how do people that are talking about what teams are going to do going to know? The process is you evaluate players, and then you give them a grade, and then what you do is you begin to slot them based upon the grades that you've given them. I don't think he would have gone that high, and the reason why that I think he made the decisions accordingly is that I think he kind of knew likelihood of where he's going to go and the range of where he could go and the probability that it can improve his stock. So I don't think he would have gone that high.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to these coaching moves. And there's so many since the last time we spoke here in Tuscaloosa. Now, keep in mind, nothing official from Nick Saban. But when we know he's out recruiting, we know that they've been hired, but no official announcement from Alabama and Nick Saban. I don't know exactly what they're waiting on, but they're not releasing a lot of these coaching hires. But we're beginning to learn the names. Let me start with Brian Baker, defensive line coach, a veteran in the NFL, Mississippi State, what he was able to do there. What do you think of Brian Baker?
Well, I think obviously, he's a good coach. I think he'll do a good job. Obviously, there's something there because I think that they had one of the better defensive line coaches in the country personally in terms of teaching the pass rush. So this is obviously something that Nick wants to do to kind of to have, Craig in a different spot, which I don't anticipate Craig's going to stay there long term because he's a D-line coach. But I think Brian obviously will fit the mold of what he wants, perhaps as a recruiter and as a coach. I think that a lot of maybe dealing with the environment of what his expectations are for assistants. I think what he's trying to do is find guys that he's a little bit more comfortable with. That's the best I can say there with that move. That's one that is a little bit curious to me, but I think Brian's a good coach.
All right, adding Charles Kelly, a guy that's been around the college game, certainly knows the Nick Saban system. He was under Jeremy Pruitt at Florida State. He was under Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. He knows what Saban needs, even though he's not worked directly with Saban. What can you tell us about Charles Kelly?
Well, I think Charles is a good coach, as you mentioned. Been around this area of recruiting. Good recruiter, good coach. I think he'll fit in pretty well with them. I think that's a pretty good hire for him, quite frankly.
And it seems like Nick Saban. I know we're not going to go through every one of these coaches, but it seems like Nick Saban is going with proven head coaches. Not really a gamble of going with inexperienced, up and coming guys. He's going back with veteran coaches, and you could go through, whether you want to go to the wide receivers, you want to go with Charles Huff at running backs. He's going back with Sal Sinceri returning here to Tuscaloosa. Yeah. He's going back with veterans with proven track records.
Guys that he knows more and more comfortable with. That's the biggest thing. I think that what, obviously happened there, just not in an overt way, but it was just guys that weren't as experienced and weren't as capable in their roles or were not as comfortable in their roles as he thought they might be when he hired them. And so I think he's going with a little bit more of a known than an unknown. Getting guys, that he's got background with, got familiarity with, that he's very, very comfortable with. So, yes, it's experience, but experience particularly with guys that he knows or has a greater feeling from. As I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, I think a lot of the moves that he made in the previous hiring cycle was more to do with recruiting, and I think he kind of went probably too far that way, and I think it started to have an effect a little bit, at least he thought, from an on-field and a development standpoint.
But how difficult is it when you replace 70%, 7 out of 10 new assistant coaches in Tuscaloosa for what we know? How hard is it as a head coach to get all these guys on the same page?
Well, it's difficult if guys are not as familiar with it, which is why, it's not going to take a guy like the guys that we mentioned or Sark to have a real feel for what the expectations are or how it needs to be done. It won't take as much time. It took an awful lot of time, I think, last year. I think when you add a lot of people that are not as familiar, it's an issue because here's the difference. Nick really doesn't care so much what they know is just that they understand what the role is, how it's going to be. They've got a broad picture of what the expectations are of how we're going to teach the offensive line, the secondary, every position. And when you have to spend a lot of time basically explaining deeper into the process, into the spring or into the summer of how you want it done, it becomes a little bit more challenging, and I think that's what happened. So I think what he's doing here with this hire, and we won't know how successful these moves are going to be until later down the road. He's trying to go with guys that have a lot more understanding of what their roles are going to be, what the expectations are going to be, and quite frankly, what it's like to work with Nick, which is, listen, let's be honest, it's not a piece of cake. It's not easy. And, I think all these guys understand that better. And maybe the others only kind of thought it and didn't realize how bad it truly was on a day-in, day-out basis or how tough it was. And I just didn't think it ended up being as good a fit. And I think, you can break down every move, but, a lot of those guys I thought made progress. But, most of those guys either moved on to better opportunities or Nick wanted to move on from. And so I think that we're seeing a little bit of a transition every year with them. And with that, to your point, it is a challenge to do that. It is easier if you have your best coaches in position and they stay there for 25 years like they did at Penn State for Joe Paterno or at Nebraska for Tom Osborne. That doesn't happen anymore. There's an upwardly mobile, idea of you want to go there. As I've said before, you want to go there to learn, to get your opportunity, get your bite at the apple to be the head guy or to be a coordinator if you've never been a coordinator. And I think that's what we're seeing is a lot of guys are taking advantage of that. And I think he needs to get guys that he's comfortable with, that you spend maybe half the year teaching them how you want it done, and then all of a sudden it's not quite done as well. And then as you're starting to make progress, they're off and gone in a year. It does affect the continuity. There's no question about it. And I think it affects the continuity of recruiting too, because it is recruiting is relationships. In terms of the sales part, how you're going to evaluate players, well, he's got a lot of systems in place to properly evaluate guys. But how do you develop relationships with the head coaches in high school and the assistant coaches in high school? That's something that, like any relationship, takes time. So, I think it's a challenge when you're constantly having a lot of changes, and I think that's probably the most difficult part of his job, quite frankly.
We're talking right now to Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com. Chris, Nick Saban, and keep in mind, I cover Nick Saban 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. We analyze everything he says, and if you listen closely to Nick Saban, he'll give you little hints of maybe something that didn't go that he was not as pleased with. He didn't talk openly. He's not going to come out and criticize. But something he said in the last 7 days, he said, I thought one of the areas that we came up a little bit short is with our assistant coaches building relationships within our players. And the audio was something that he was talking to a group of high school coaches, and he said how important that is for coaches to build these relationships, and you get more out of your players. If you can build those relationships, he said, you get more out of your players. And he said that's where I think our team came up a little bit short in building those key relationships that pays off in that 3.5-hour game.
Well, and only he would know and understand that, because obviously he's seeing it every day, and it is important to have those type of relationships. I don't know why certain guys didn't develop the type of relationships as well as he thought they would when he hired them. That's difficult, ascertaining what a guy's background is and what his some of his ideas and his conceptual ideas. That's one thing, but the personality of pardon me,
you're fine. You're fine. No problem.
Getting over this flu. I think it becomes a challenge too. And people might say, well, it's hard to develop a relationship. They haven't been there that long. But there is certain things that obviously he saw that no one else could see unless you're in that building every day, is that maybe the little things that weren't done quite like he normally likes it. And I don't know exactly what that was. It's certainly nothing that is clearly definitive that they didn't do this, they didn't do that. But it's pretty clear that they didn't reach their players, to their position players, as well as they had hoped. And let me say this. You just never know. And I, applauded the hiring of a guy like Craig Kulikowski last year. I thought that was phenomenal. Yet I have to say that overall, I didn't think that his defensive line played to the ability that his players normally play to. This is a guy that took 2-star guys at Missouri and 3-star guys and made them NFL players. He did wonders at Miami in a short time, kind of turning around what was not a very talented defensive line. I thought that was a great hire. Something there didn't quite click there. I don't want to speculate, certainly not on the air, but just something just didn't mesh there, because that, from a football standpoint, just seems like it would work. But, sometimes you get the good-looking guy and the good-looking girl, and you think, man, that would be a great couple, and they just don't hit it off. Something just went amiss there that I thought would be a home run, and to this point, it looks like they didn't even get to first base.
Chris, we've also learned from Chris Lowe from ESPN, and we have not asked you about this, but it was reported by ESPN that Pete Golding took over the play calling responsibility for Alabama on the defensive side of the football in the first month. So that could have been the second game, third game, fourth game. But Pete Golding is also probably the likely candidate that will get that defensive coordinator title here in Tuscaloosa. What do you see in Pete Golding? Because Alabama fans, let me give you an example. They're a little bit concerned because if he was truly the play caller, Alabama's defense lacked a Nick Saban style defense this year. At least there were some injuries. There were some reasons why that happened. And we blame Tosh LaPoy a lot. He departed for Cleveland, and then now we're learning that Pete Golding might have been more of the primary play caller on the defense. Should Alabama fans be concerned if Pete Golding is the DC?
Well, I understand the concern, but here's the thing that it's the typical fallback for fans. Well, the defense wasn't typical Alabama defense, so it must be play calling. Not necessarily the plays you call. Okay, in fact, it's very little of what you call defensively. It's how you play it and how you're teaching it. So it didn't really matter. Well, they ain't blitzing out. Well, are they playing the base well enough, or are their base defense well enough? Are they rushing the passer as well as they could? Or are they on the field more than they normally are? That's definitely what's true. So it's more than just play calling. So I would say this, that I'm not surprised that I knew there was some involvement there. I didn't know to what degree, but I knew that there was in Tosh a guy that was not quite ready for that job, but he got it to keep him for recruiting purposes. And now he's off to the NFL to learn a little bit more about, being a better on the field coach, which that's nothing against Tosh. We're talking about a good young coach. It's just not as experienced enough. With Pete, I think he feels a little bit more comfortable with Pete. And I can say this, that if he was the guy that he felt like was the better fit to call plays, then I trust that. Now, is he the best fit going forward? I don't know. That's a good question. The other options, there was, somebody else that I liked an awful lot for Nick to possibly get. It didn't work out. I don't know why, and that's that. But I think that Pete has a familiarity, and I would not overreact as fans. Oh, but his defense, it couldn't do anything. And, what, are you kidding me? He called plays and he did, and we didn't win the title and we had an awful game. We got blown out by Clemson. How could that be? Don't overreact to that. I would think of it in terms of some of the things I've talked about. They need to be able to be a little bit more run-focused on offense. They need to teach a little better technique on the defensive side to play whatever you call, play a little bit better and with better symmetry than they did this year. And if you do that, all of a sudden people are not complaining about the play calls. I don't know that, in breaking down the tape, it wasn't anything that was a play call problem. It was more of an execution problem because whatever they called didn't work. I mean, now, would I have been more aggressive in attacking the quarterback with blitz pressure? I would have. But, if you don't execute the blitz well, and if you don't play it well in coverage, well, that's not going to work either. And you know that. So my concern would be the overall maybe structure of how things were taught was a bigger issue than just the play calling. But we'll see, I think, what he does to go along with Pete on the defensive side that might shore things up there. That's where I would be a little bit more interested in kind of finding out where they are there.
Super Bowl, who's going to win this thing?
I think it's I think if you can get up early on the Patriots, they're not nearly the same type of team. They have been a team that struggled when they've been down 8 points or more. They're like 25th in the league offensively when they get down 8 points. When they can keep the margin 7 points either way or less, then they're in really good shape. I think that turnover margin, Patriots favor, I'd give them a slight edge, but I'll say this: if it's close, the Patriots will win. If the Rams can get off to an early lead, I think the Rams could win and could win by maybe as much as 10. But I do think the Patriots are likely to win.
And that is the topic of conversation. When you look at the play calling, Roger Goodell today said our officials are human, but they're looking at trying to make some of these judgment calls. Any interpretation of some of the things that he said of adjusting some of the judgment calls? Because I know in your area, no Saint fans are not taking just a quick quote of saying we're all human. They're looking for answers, and they're coming for blood.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing, and of course he plays the politician role. His dad, Roger's dad, was a politician, and the apple didn't fall far from the tree. There. Here's the bottom line, and I say this: when you see that the call was wrong on the field, and you have the technology to correct it, but you choose not to have the proper procedure to correct it, then you gotta fix it. It's a problem. So I understand. Well, if you reviewed this, you got to review every other thing on that play. I do believe eventually we're going to go to more of a game that's going to be officiated more in the booth, real time, to where the games could be quicker and officiated better. But I do think, at the very least, I don't know that we're going to see rule changes. But the one thing that I've got out of this is that if you're the officials and you're head of the officials, I can tell you what they're going to tell the officials from now on. If it's anywhere close, throw the flag, because you can pick up the flag. But if you don't throw it, then that's it. Because, see, that's the whole issue. So in a case like that, they're going to use that and say, if in doubt, or even if it's not, just throw the flag. Because you can always get together and pick it up and say, no, it wasn't interference. That's done. You can look at that. But when you don't call it and you missed it, the whole world can see that you screwed up and you can't correct it. And there's no mechanism to correct it. And that's a problem. And it is a real issue. And it wasn't the only thing that cost the Saints. They could have played better early, all that. But they didn't. The Rams didn't play better than the Saints. The Saints didn't play better than the Rams. The bottom line is both teams in a game need to play as best as they can, and the officials are there to officiate to the best of their ability, and it is a difficult job. And if you've got the ability to correct mistakes, you've got to be able to do it in a very quick fashion. And I think the league has kind of got a black eye on this right now, and it's not going away. And I think it'll continue, and it certainly composed the majority of the commissioner's talk today. It's the question that everyone wanted.
Postseason savings right now, you get 58% off for only a limited time. LandryFootball.com. Chris, take this opportunity to tell us more how we can connect with everything that you guys are doing at LandryFootball.com.
Well, first of all, you can follow me on Twitter at Landry Football, Facebook Landry Football, and, of course, at the website LandryFootball.com. As Ryan said at the beginning, go and check us out, our newsletter. It's free. Sign up for it. It'll come in every Friday. We'll have some interesting tidbits that are not in, for publication, but are some real interesting insights into some things that took place. In fact, we had one on Alabama and some of the coaching issues with Saban and his staff a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of went into that and kind of some of the things that did or didn't happen with Dan Enos. And so we have some of that. So make sure you get that. Check out the website. See what we do. If you like college football, you like the NFL, you like personnel, you like the coaching aspect, we take the game inside the film room and bring it to you. That's what we do. So we right now, obviously, as the college season is over, as the NFL season is wrapping up this Sunday, we're heavy into free agency, the draft, obviously the second wave of recruiting, roster analysis. We do things just as they're done inside a college football staff or an NFL staff, getting you ready for the season. So it's a way to take you, hold you by the hand and take you inside information of what's going on, as well as breakdowns of why it's going on. So that's what we do for you. We got our postseason savings special, so you want to take advantage of that right now. So check it out. You'll love it. If you like football, you'll absolutely love LandryFootball.com. It doesn't start for us. In fact, Ryan, I think it is busier and is more information when the football season is not going on than when it is going on. Because as we just talked about today, coaching changes. We're going to have free agency players moving left and right. We got transfers in college football left and right. News around spring practice left and right when that starts. And Arizona State's going to be the first team to do that. And on and on and on. So we're going to have a lot of massive changeovers in the roster. That's what we do for you, break it all down. So check it out at LandryFootball.com.
And sign up for the War Room, as Chris talked about. It's very easy and it's free. Gives you a little bit of an appetizer of what they're able to provide. You can subscribe right there on the front page, LandryFootball.com. Chris, as always, thank you again for your time. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You do the same and feel better. Take care.